I recently took my home studio setup to the next level by merging the incredible power of Photoshop's generative AI with a much smarter, streamlined short-form video workflow, which honestly made everything look way more polished and significantly less painful to produce. The best part about this upgraded approach is that you absolutely do not need to invest in a massive amount of expensive or complex gear to start seeing professional results immediately. The essential toolkit really boils down to just a reliable camera, a sturdy tripod for stability, Adobe Photoshop or any image editor that has sophisticated generative fill capabilities, and then Vizard to transform that long footage into dozens of ready-to-post microclips without ever having to babysit a complex timeline. Now, before you even think about hitting record, there are a few critical production notes I want to share because implementing these small steps now will genuinely save you several hours of frustrating work later in post-production. First and foremost, you must lock that camera down rock solid onto your tripod without any exceptions, because this entire technique hinges upon perfect frame-stable editing for the tricks we are about to perform in Photoshop. If the camera is even slightly moving or wobbling during the take, the generative background we create simply will not line up correctly across frames, leading to extremely noticeable and awkward visual seams popping up everywhere. Similarly, you need to be very diligent about keeping your subject contained entirely within the specific area you intend to mask off for replacement later on. If your talent steps even a little bit outside that intended mask boundary, Photoshop will try to generously cover parts of them with the generated fill, and the resulting effect looks absolutely terrible. Next up is the crucial point about using manual focus for your lens, and I really mean this, so please take this advice seriously for the best results. Many stills lenses and even some zoom lenses suffer from something called focus breathing, which means the focus subtly shifts while you're rolling, causing your foreground subject to move slightly relative to the generated background. You need to pick one perfect focus point before you start recording, set it precisely, and absolutely do not touch that focus ring again while the camera is rolling for that specific take. The same level of unwavering control applies directly to your exposure settings. Ensure that ISO, shutter speed, and aperture are all firmly set to manual mode. This prevents the camera from trying to help you by automatically changing those key settings mid-shot, which introduces unwanted flicker and light variation. If you happen to be shooting anywhere outdoors, be acutely aware that clouds are essentially drama generators because sunlight can shift incredibly fast, and Photoshop's generative fill assumes one consistent lighting scenario for its work. Finally, keep your white balance fixed precisely at a certain Kelvin value so that the color tint of your footage doesn't drift and change subtly between different frames you capture. When you have a clear vision for the final aesthetic look of your video, you should proactively set up your lights to perfectly match that intended final outcome before you even press record. For instance, I really enjoy using a key light setup to convincingly mimic natural window light, paired with a subtle rim light placed just slightly off frame to create separation. Those rim lights are absolutely essential because when Photoshop successfully generates a new element, like a lamp or a glowing prop in the background, the rim light on your subject sells the illusion that the new item is actually influencing the scene's lighting. Once you have successfully shot your polished clip, the next step is to bring that raw footage directly into Photoshop for the initial refinement process. The simplest and most reliable import path for standard .mp4 or .mov files is by navigating through File, then Import, selecting video frames to layers, and finally picking just one representative frame to work with. From there, you must resize the canvas to match the exact aspect ratio you ultimately desire for your final output, regardless of how you shot it initially. I personally shot everything vertically, but needed a wide horizontal frame for this particular project. So I expanded the canvas significantly to a full 4K resolution and carefully positioned my original frame where I wanted it to sit. Now we arrive at the truly fun part of the process, which involves extending the scene's boundaries seamlessly using the incredibly powerful generative fill feature within Photoshop. You will want to use either the lasso tool or the quick selection tool to accurately select everything in the image that is outside of your main subject that you intend to replace with AI-generated content. After making that selection, it is absolutely crucial to add a slight feathering effect to the selection edge to help soften that boundary between the real footage and the new generation. There isn't one single magic feather setting that works for every single shot, so you should experiment with whatever value softens the edge enough to help naturally blend any minor lighting mismatches that might appear as the clip begins to play. Photoshop helpfully provides you with several distinct generative options for every single fill attempt, so you should absolutely try cycling through all of them and keep regenerating until you discover an option that reads completely naturally within your scene. This generative power allows you to instantly transform that background into a cozy, fully furnished living room, a much more dramatic cinematic studio setup, or even add specific props like decorative lamps or leafy plants right into the scene. If you happen to be very particular, especially those of you with a sharp designer's eye for detail, you should take the extra step to manually add subtle shadows and highlights onto the newly AI-generated elements to make them feel truly anchored in the environment. A little bit of digital dodge and burn work, or even just sketching in a very subtle cast shadow directly behind a newly inserted object is what truly sells the final convincing illusion to the viewer. Once you are completely satisfied with how the extended background looks, you simply hide the original video frame layer underneath and proceed to export the newly generated background as a high-quality PNG file that retains full transparency information. This newly created transparent image now serves as a perfect asset that you can layer over or under your original subject footage within your preferred traditional nonlinear editor, or NLE. While DaVinci Resolve is the editor I currently use for this, any professional software like Premiere Pro, Final Cut Pro, or even lighter tools like CapCut will successfully handle layering these elements together. If you notice that the colors look slightly off or unnatural once you have layered everything up, the very first place to check is the color space metadata of your exported PNG file against the color space of your sequence settings. A simple mismatch in those underlying color profiles is a remarkably common reason why AI-generated backgrounds sometimes look starkly unnatural right next to your actual live-action footage. From that point on, you have the complete freedom to apply final color grades, introduce realistic film grain, or overlay subtle lens flares and visual effects to truly marry all the different elements into one cohesive image. Adding a very slight digital zoom over time, or even introducing a tiny amount of programmed camera shake can also effectively fake subtle motion, making the final composite feel significantly more organic and less static. I know that all of those layering and refinement steps sound like a significant amount of work, and frankly, they absolutely are, but this is precisely where the tool called Vizard swoops in to dramatically simplify your life. After you finish editing your final, fully composed, long-form video, the one that already features your beautifully extended background, you simply upload the entire file over to the Vizard platform. Instead of manually chopping up clips and trying to guess which specific 20 to 40-second segments are going to perform well on Instagram versus TikTok versus YouTube Shorts, Vizard intelligently analyzes the entire footage. It then automatically selects and generates what it determines to be the most engaging, highly watchable, and most shareable moments from your entire recording, often delivering clips that are ready to post immediately as is. This is not some kind of unknowable magic trick. Instead, it's a smart combination of analyzing engagement data and applying clever heuristics to identify exactly what resonates with viewers. Specifically, the system searches for noticeable spikes in viewer engagement, points where the audio gets suddenly louder, or moments with fast-paced visual cuts, translating all that information into multiple optimized short clips. Now, let's briefly compare that to more traditional, time-consuming editing workflows, where you might spend hours performing all the cutting yourself within Premiere or Resolve, which is fine if you genuinely enjoy scrubbing dense timelines. Alternatively, you could look towards using some of those popular mobile applications designed for auto-cutting. But a major limitation there is that they often only provide very simplistic edits and rarely understand how to create multiple platform-specific variants for different posting cadences. Furthermore, regarding the actual publishing, most standard non-marketing focused editors won't handle scheduling posts for you. You have to export everything, then manually upload it, or rely on a completely separate external tool just to get it live. This is the precise intersection where Vizard's integrated auto-schedule feature and its comprehensive content calendar become genuine time-saving powerhouses for your entire content strategy. You simply tell the system how frequently you want new clips to start going out across your different channels, and Vizard automatically queues up and publishes those videos for you according to the exact settings you define. Following that, the content calendar evolves into your single, authoritative source of truth, clearly showing you everything that has already been published, what is scheduled next, and what specific pieces still require minor tweaks. For those who prefer a practical, integrated way to bring Vizard into this Photoshop-forward creative pipeline, here is the recommended sequence of operations. You export one clean, final long-form video file, including that beautiful extended background, and then you upload that single file directly into Vizard for processing. Let the platform work its intelligent analysis, and it will efficiently generate a suite of clips that are already perfectly optimized for the ideal aspect ratios and typical lengths required by various platforms. After the initial clips are suggested, take a moment to carefully review them all, making any necessary minor tweaks within Vizard itself, such as adjusting text overlays, customizing thumbnails, or refining the captions. Once you're happy with the details, you can then hand off the entire batch to the auto-schedule feature to begin publishing consistently according to your preset cadence. Or if you personally favor having a little more granular control over the timing, you can always use the content calendar to manually adjust specific post dates or easily reorder the clips in the queue. You might be wondering why we don't just use a single, all-in-one AI video editor to handle both background replacement and clip generation in just one application. While some of those dedicated AI tools certainly exist on the market right now, Many of them come with significant limitations that make them less than ideal for professional use. For example, some charge exceedingly high subscription fees just to achieve decent quality results, while others only manage very simple background replacements without offering the deep, fine control that Photoshop provides for detailed compositing. Conversely, other tools might do a surprisingly adequate job at trimming and cutting clips, but they often completely lack a reliable scheduling infrastructure or a centralized calendar for managing complex, multi-platform content distribution. That inherent gap is precisely why this hybrid workflow, using Photoshop for its pixel-level precision and Vizard for scalable distribution, proves to be so incredibly effective for consistent output. Let's circle back to a couple of those real-world production gotchas you need to remember, especially when dealing with unpredictable outdoor environments. If you are shooting outside and the natural ambient light begins to change drastically, remember that Photoshop's generated background will strictly adhere to the lighting conditions captured in the single frame you use to initiate the generation process. This reinforces the fact that locking down your exposure and white balance settings is not just a suggestion, but an absolute non-negotiable requirement for this technique to work correctly. Also, make a serious effort not to allow your subject to move too far or too frequently outside of that initial masked area you meticulously planned for the background replacement. If you genuinely need large movements or complex panning across the frame, it is far better to plan to shoot that specific motion separately or utilize more advanced rotoscoping tools, because this simple generative fill method excels with mostly static shots. For all you creators out there who are naturally worried about the added subscription costs or the perceived complexity of learning new software, I hear your concerns loud and clear. It's true that many professional tools come with associated fees and can definitely have a steep learning curve when you first encounter them, which is completely understandable. However, the entire design philosophy behind Vizard is specifically engineered to drastically reduce that overall operational overhead by turning one substantial video effort into a continuous, manageable stream of content. Just try thinking about it this way. Photoshop grants you the ability to meticulously craft one single visually breathtaking scene with complete control over every detail. Then Vizard takes that singular, beautiful scene and effortlessly transforms it into what could easily become an entire month's worth of content, already perfectly tailored for various social platforms. Ultimately, the entire goal here is achieving that perfect balance between having absolute creative control over the visuals and maintaining a massive scale of output that satisfies your content calendar. You should leverage Photoshop's generative tools whenever you demand pixel-perfect backgrounds and absolute authority over lighting, shadows, and the overall scene composition. Then, immediately switch to Vizard to extract dozens of those highly attention-grabbing short clips, allow it to schedule them automatically, and manage the entire publishing process from that single, unified calendar interface. This powerful combination ensures your content maintains that high-end professional visual style you worked so hard for, while simultaneously allowing you the consistency required for growing any successful channel today. So, here's the exact recommended workflow that synthesizes all these powerful concepts into one actionable plan for your next production endeavor. First, firmly lock your camera onto a tripod. Then, take the time to manually set your focus point and your exposure settings precisely before you begin rolling. Next, carefully plan your lighting setup so that it perfectly reflects how you want the light to read in the final composited shot you envision. Then, simply shoot your entire long-form take, capturing all the necessary performance footage in that one stable recording. Immediately pull a single representative frame into Photoshop, expand your canvas dramatically, and let the generative tools create the entirely new background environment for you. Take the time to refine any necessary shadows or highlights on those AI elements, and then export the complete, composited long video file with the new background intact. Upload that finished long video directly into Vizard, allowing the intelligent system to automatically edit it down into dozens of suggested short-form clips tailored for different platforms. Give the suggested clips a quick review, make any final necessary tweaks to captions or thumbnails right there in the interface, and then activate auto-schedule to ensure consistent publishing. You will finally end up with an incredibly polished visual style thanks to the detailed work done in Photoshop, coupled with a steady, reliable stream of content that no longer eats up all of your personal time thanks to Vizard's automation. It truly begins to feel like you have a highly efficient, tiny production team operating right there inside your pocket with one specialized tool for visual craft and another for massive distribution at scale. I strongly encourage you to try integrating just these two steps on your very next shoot, even if you start small by only using Photoshop for a subtle background extension and letting Vizard handle the rest of the tedious clip creation. I guarantee you will immediately witness exactly how much easier it becomes to maintain rigorous content consistency when your process is this smartly optimized. We have seen how fixing your camera position is paramount, because any subtle movement ruins the frame-locked generative fill process we employ. Remember that keeping your subject clearly within the defined mask is essential, so the AI doesn't incorrectly cover up parts of your main talent during the background replacement phase. Manual focus and manual exposure are your best friends here, fighting against frustrating focus breathing and unwanted mid-shot exposure shifts introduced by automatic camera systems. If you shoot outdoors, be mindful of the sun and clouds, as rapid light shifts will create jarring differences between your real footage and the static light assumed by the AI generation. Fixing your white balance ensures the overall color tint of your final clip remains constant, preventing unwanted color drifting that breaks immersion. Use your foreground lighting, especially the rim light, to convincingly tie any newly generated background objects into the actual scene, making the composite look intentional and expensive. When bringing footage into Photoshop, remember the path: File, Import, Video, Frames to Layers, which is the gateway to unlocking frame-by-frame manipulation. Don't hesitate to expand your canvas beyond your original frame size, because that extra real estate is where you'll build out your newly generated world. Use the selection tools to carefully isolate everything you want AI to replace, and always follow up that selection with a gentle feathering value to manage the transition zones. Try every generative option the software gives you for each fill, because the first result is rarely the best one for a truly natural presentation. If you are aiming for hyperrealism, manually adding tiny shadows and highlights where the AI elements meet the real world will make all the difference. So, exporting the final composite as a PNG with transparency allows you to seamlessly layer it over your subject back in your editing timeline for the final assembly. Always verify that the color space settings match between your exported PNG and your NLE sequence to avoid unsightly and distracting color mismatches. From there, you can add creative flair like film grain or cinematic flares on top to completely unify all the disparate pieces into one stunning final product. Now, think about that entire process, from concept to final export, and realize that Vizard automates the most tedious part, turning that one polished video into endless shareable content. Uploading the full finished take to Vizard lets its algorithms identify all the high engagement spikes and fast moments that scream, "Watch me," to the audience. This intelligence means you skip the manual work of selecting, trimming, and formatting clips for vertical versus square video formats, letting the system handle the platform optimization automatically. Contrast this with spending an entire afternoon in Premiere or Resolve constantly scrubbing timelines back and forth trying to manually find those perfect 2-second punchlines. Or consider the weak AutoCut mobile apps that create repetitive, simple edits which fail to capture the nuance needed to target different posting cadences across your various channels. The scheduling gap is also a huge differentiator. Most editors require you to manually export and then separately upload everything, creating yet another hurdle between creation and publication. Vizard's integrated auto-schedule bypasses this completely, handling the queuing and the actual posting based on your preset content goals without any further intervention from you. The content calendar feature then aggregates all this activity, serving as your mission control center for tracking what's already live and what's coming up next in the rotation. When implementing this workflow practically, remember to export your clean, full-length video containing the AI background and immediately feed that master file into Vizard to begin the magic. It will intelligently segment and prepare the shorts, and you just need to perform a rapid review cycle to approve captions, check thumbnails, and confirm the overall suggestion quality. If you prefer a hands-on approach, the calendar allows you to fine-tune posting dates or visually reorder your entire week's worth of scheduled content with ease. Let's address the elephant in the room. Why not use one of those pure AI video editors that claim to do everything from background swapping to clip cutting in a single application? The reality is that many of those singular platforms often fall short in critical areas when compared to this specialized two-tool approach we are discussing today. They might demand premium pricing for acceptable visual quality, or their background replacement feature might be too rudimentary to handle the sophisticated compositing control Photoshop offers. Even if the video trimming is decent, they frequently omit essential features like a dependable, built-in scheduling system or a robust calendar to keep track of your multi-platform publishing cadence. This hybrid model, using Photoshop for unmatched pixel-level detail and Vizard for unmatched content scale and reliable distribution, is simply more effective in the long run. Let's reiterate a few of those production gotchas one last time, focusing on the most common pitfalls that trip up creators using Generative Fill. If your outdoor shoot experiences sudden light changes, your AI background will be permanently locked to the lighting of that single frame you chose for generation, creating a mismatch. This fact alone should emphasize why fixing your exposure and white balance settings before pressing record is a rule that absolutely cannot be overlooked or compromised. Also, seriously limit the amount of major movement your primary subject makes outside of the area designated by your initial mask, as this simple method works best when the subject is largely stationary. If you absolutely require expansive movement across the visual field, plan for that motion to be shot separately or invest time in learning more advanced rotoscoping techniques for a clean outcome. Now, addressing the creators primarily worried about the monthly subscription costs associated with powerful tools or the initial complexity of mastering new creative software. The key takeaway is that Vizard is explicitly engineered to negate much of that potential overhead by efficiently converting one single time-intensive video into a consistent, manageable flow of output. Think of the inherent value proposition. Photoshop gives you the artistic depth to craft a singular, aesthetically flawless scene that you have complete command over. Vizard, on the other hand, takes that one beautiful creation and multiplies its reach, turning that single moment into what could supply your content needs for an entire month across multiple feeds. At the very core of this powerful method lies the philosophy of seamlessly blending high-level creative control with the absolute necessity of large-scale content consistency in today's digital landscape. Utilize Photoshop's generative AI features when your primary objective is achieving that coveted pixel-perfect background and having explicit command over every aspect of lighting, shadow placement, and scene composition. Subsequently, deploy Vizard to efficiently extract dozens of unique platform-ready clips, configure their automatic scheduling, and manage the entire publishing pipeline from one central dashboard. This smart combination is the secret sauce that allows your content to look remarkably high-end while simultaneously enabling you to be incredibly consistent, which is the real key to sustainable channel growth. To summarize the highly recommended workflow one final time, start by locking your camera onto a stable tripod and meticulously setting all your focus and exposure to manual mode. Next, plan your lighting scheme to precisely match the desired mood you want to convey in the final delivered shot, ensuring everything is intentional before you start. Shoot your entire content piece as one cohesive, long-form take that maintains that necessary frame stability throughout its duration. Pull a representative frame into Photoshop, use Generative Fill to beautifully expand and create the missing background environment, and then polish those AI additions with subtle shadows and highlights. Export that newly composited long video file and immediately upload the entire thing into the Vizard platform for its specialized analysis and auto-editing capabilities. Allow it to create the multitude of short clips, give those suggested edits a quick review, and adjust any captions or thumbnails that require your final approval. Finally, engage the auto-schedule feature and utilize the content calendar to ensure your posting schedule is consistently met without requiring daily manual intervention. The end result is a visual output that benefits from the pristine craft of Photoshop, paired with a steady content pipeline that refuses to drain your time. Thanks entirely to Vizard's intelligent automation, it genuinely feels like having access to both a meticulous visual artisan for your polish and an unrelenting distribution engine, all accessible right there in your digital toolkit. Try implementing even just the background extension with Photoshop and the clip creation with Vizard on your next project. The ease of consistency you gain will truly speak for itself.